in this recording, we're going to show how you can use MakeCode and share your projects with your teammates, all right, or with your, with people that you're going to collaborate with on your particular project. And so we can go ahead to our regular MakeCode platform, and I'm just going to click a new project. And then, actually, yeah, I should say that you're probably wondering why I have two screens here. So I am on the right-hand side, and then my colleague, Joe, is on the left-hand side. And so he's going to do almost the same thing as me, and then we'll be able to make some changes to the project and that sort of thing. So, but Joe, you're not going to make a new project. What you're going to do is grab a copy of mine after I have it. So I'm going to give my project a name. We're going to just make a beating heart game. And so I'm going to go ahead and create that. So now that I've gone and created this project, I can start to add in some things. So on start, we can have maybe some icon, like a beating heart icon. So, all right, so we got that. Perfect. So as you can see, it beat once. Great. So what I want to do is I want to be able to send this over to my partner that I'm working with. And there's a couple ways to do this, but one of the great ways to, if you're getting started with programming, is to use a website called GitHub. Now, GitHub is essentially Google Doc or Google Drive for developers. And it's a collaborative way for you to work on projects at the same time. And so you're going to need a username, an email, and password. So again, you can use any credentials you want. And you go through the sign-up process. It asks you a few preliminary questions. But after you've done that, you're set to go. Okay, so now that you've created your GitHub repository account, we need to link it with the MakeCode platform. And so what we can do is, there's actually two ways to do this, and Joe's going to demonstrate one of them. So one is to go and create a new project. So Joe's got his project test there. And then his test project is just the regular start one. Because we can start with that, we know that's a functioning project. And so just down at the bottom where there's the test and the save, there's a little cat. And that's the GitHub icon. And so he's going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to ask him to log in with his credentials. And so he's going to click on sign in. And then what it's going to do, it's going to pop over to here and authorize that MakeCode and GitHub can link together. And so because Joe is already logged in with the tab on the left-hand side into his GitHub repository, then it will just make that authorization complete. So he's going to click the big green button there, and then it will pop back down here, and there he is. So now what he can do is this pop-up will come up, and it will say, like, do you want to create your GitHub repository? And you're going to have a name. You can have a little description about it. And so this can be a project or a description of the base project that you're working on. And then you can have public or a private repository. So you can change those so it's only visible to you or to other people. And so you're going to want to be able to create a public one so that you can push it to your friends. So Joe can just go ahead and create that repository. And what that's doing in the background is creating essentially a repository on GitHub. So if we go over to GitHub and we click on repositories, you'll see now that you have a repository. So it's a MakeCode project, It's created just now, and so if you click on test, it will show you what it looks like from the GitHub point of view. And so there's a bunch of files that have been created, and then as we scroll down, you can see details about how you can import it, how you can edit it, and the blocks that are in there. So it's sort of cool to see the blocks that are in there. So we're going to go back over to MakeCode. And so what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to push my project, and then I'm going to share it with Joe, and then Joe can import that project into his environment. So now that we have our beating heart here, and I've already linked my GitHub, so I'm going to create a GitHub repository. So and I can put a description. I can put a description later. So I'm going to push this over. So now, I guess the other thing you'll notice on for Joe, where it says test, there's a little check mark. And so GitHub uses version control. And so it is checking that the local copy, so the copy that you are currently working on in your browser cache, is the same as the GitHub repository. And so mine, you see, has got this little arrow. And so what I can do is I can commit and push changes. So if I've changed something around, so I can add beats 4 for this particular, so I can have it that on start, I have 4 heartbeats. And so I've changed my local compared to what's online. So I'm going to push those changes. And so I have this option that will come up. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger here. Can I make it bigger? Should be able to. Come on. Doesn't want to make it bigger. Okay, well, I'll just make it full screen. Mine full screen for now. Joe, I'm losing you for a second. Well, stay there, but don't leave. So I now have my my GitHub repository. The name of the repository. I'm describing the changes, so it's nice to keep track of what you've done as your changes. So I've added a loop to repeat 4 times. And so you can see here it details if I've added, changed, or moved a block, it's in the colors. If I've deleted a block, it has this sort of yellow grid. And if they're not changed, it keeps it as gray. So this on start wasn't changed, but everything else inside has been changed. I can also, so I'm going to go ahead and commit and push those changes. So what it does now is it pushes those up, and I can click on here. So this opens that repository on GitHub. So I can then go and see the changes that I've made. And we can see those here. So now I can also look at the history. So we've got the history, so the commits that have happened. So there's been 3 different commits. So we had creating this empty repo, pushing the files for the MakeCode project, and then adding a loop. So I can go back and if I like this one, or if I want to look a little bit more about it, what was in there, so I can go and restore those if I want to. But for right now, we're just going to want to share this with Joe, because I want to, this is a project that I'm going to work on with him, and so how I can do that. So the one thing that I need to do is I can't be in blocks. Now, that doesn't mean that I have to code my full project in JavaScript. What it means is when I switch my project to JavaScript and I commit those changes, so I can commit and push here, but it also allows me this other little button here and says invite others to contribute to this GitHub repository. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And so it needs me to log into my username, into my GitHub, just to confirm that it's me. And then I can invite collaborators. And so I'm going to go ahead and invite a collaborator. So it was you, Ottawa, MakerMobile. So there we are. So I'm going to go ahead and invite this collaborator. And so what Joe is going to see on his end is he can go back to his GitHub and do a refresh. He might, if you just go back to your main, just click on your GitHub. No. So he'll have to go back to his email and confirm that he was just requested no, that one was for the MakerMobile, or for the MakeCode. And then, now Andrew has invited you. So I have invited him to be part of that repository. So you and your partner have to sort of confirm that. And so I have invited him. So you want to do it sort of right away. As you can see, there's an expiry date of 7 days. So click on View Invitation. And so you'll want to accept the invitation. So I'm the owner of it, and so I'm allowing him to look at it. So now that he has access to it, what we can now go do is go back to his MakeCode platform, and he can click on Home. And so the second way that I was going to describe to you about creating or linking to your GitHub repository is through the import tool. And so if you import, this allows you to import from your GitHub. Now, we've already linked our GitHub, so he can import what is already in your GitHub repository. But if you didn't have your GitHub and your MakeCode linked, this is where you would be creating that link. So now he's going to go ahead and click on the project that I had shared with him. So let's click on that one. And so I'm going to open it up on my end, and he's going to open it up on his end. So now we're going to see, so he has got the most up-to-date version of it, and I have the most up-to-date version of it. That's great. So what Joe can do is he can now add another piece of code to it. So if he wants to do on a button press, there we go. So we're having a heartbeat, so we're happy about that. And so what he can do is, so that goes ahead, that beats for 4 times, and then press button A just to, our code is working. That's great. So he can now push that change up to GitHub. So you can see that arrow is pushing up, and so you can commit those changes. And so now he's going to write, or he should have written, a description of what changes he made, but you're going to commit those to it. And so he can go ahead and say, okay, that's great. And if he wants to view the commits, then he's good to go with that. Now for me, on my side of things, I can, according to this, I've got the most up to date. But if I refresh, you'll see here that now I have a down arrow. And so the down arrow actually means that there are remote changes that have happened to the GitHub repository that I need to download before I should keep moving forward with my code. And so I'm going to press this, and you'll see here, instead of a push and commit, I'm actually going to pull changes. And so on my side, I'm going to pull those changes. So you can see how Joe has the pull changes as a check mark. I've now got it after I had the green arrow pulling it down. And so if I go over, I'm going to see those changes that Joe had made to his project. And so if he goes back, then we now have the same project. So I can then duplicate this, and I can add on button B pressed. Maybe we're going to show a different icon. Maybe this is a fun one. I'm going to have a little bit of a pause in there so we can see it a little bit longer. And maybe I can say, oh yeah, Joe, we should have added this, or I'd like to change this on your block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push these commits to it, and then I have updated the button A press and added So again, you can see what has changed, or what changes that I have made. I'm going to commit and push these changes. And so now they're up to date. Okay, so now you can see that both Joe and I have the same code. And so if we can go ahead and work together on this project. So he's going to go ahead and add some stuff, and I'll add some stuff. And so maybe he has an on shake, and I'm going to do something based on if we've tilted to the left or tilted to the right. We're going to maybe show an arrow pointing that way. Okay, so then at some point we're both gonna, so I'm he's already got his thing in there, and if he shakes it, looks good. So he's got the starting of a counter, and then he's going to commit those changes. So he's pushed those changes, and he's going to add a little description to what he's done, so that again we can sort of keep track of what we've done. So he's added the step counter thing, or whatever, counter for on shake. Perfect. Yeah, so it's a great way to keep track of what's going on. So he's going to commit and push those changes. And so now he has got the most recent version, and GitHub has the most recent version, but I don't have a version that's similar to that. And so what's going to happen here is if I push this over, so I've added a tilt. So as you can see, I did a refresh, and here we have the on Joe had just added, and we have the tilt left on my side. And so if Joe, you can see how he has this down arrow, so he can go ahead and pull that down. And so they'll pull those changes. And so it's just going back and forth, sort of pulling the changes to allow you and your partner to have working things. Now, so if I was going to go ahead and add something into, I'm going to change the variable within the tilt and the tilt left, and Joe also does something in the tilt left. So that's like you're really working on the same part of the project. Then we'll need to, we'll come up with another error will come up, and we'll work through that together. So I'm going to commit and push those changes. And then Joe should try to go ahead and commit those changes. Actually, before you do that, you just want to... no, I think you should be good. Yeah, commit and push changes. Yeah, so we get a merge here. So what you want to do is you want to go into the JavaScript and then try to pull those changes. So you'll see that there's line 14. There's some. So you'll see how it says local changes. So there's some changes about like what the local is changed and what's happening on the remote changes. And so you can see how we can sort of like figure out, okay, well, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. So again, if you just scroll up a little bit, Joe, you can see here this is inside the tilt left function. Basic show LEDs. We got an arrow pointing to the left, and the local changes. So what Joe had added here was the radio string function, whereas what I had, this is the remote changes pulled from GitHub, was I had done show LEDs blank, and so we have to make a decision on what's going to happen here. How can we fix those? And so we can go ahead and delete one or have a discussion. We can comment them out. And so that's line 14 and line 16 are, those are the differences that we're going to see that come up when you're doing these merge conflicts. So if it's a brand new thing, like you saw before, where I added a tilt left and he added an on shake, those were different functions that got pushed into it. But here we had both worked on the tilt left, adding some code, and so we have to be aware of that. And so that's where you have to sort of work together with your partner and figure out, okay, what am I working on? What are you working on? How can we work on this together? And so, Joe, if you want to pick one of those, and essentially you can delete it. You can either comment it out with 2 backslashes, and so you would do that for line 14, line 15, and line 16. Or, yeah, deleting all 14, 15, and 16. And there we are. So now if we go down to line 25, we're 22 now. Oh yeah, so that's just telling us what we had pulled down from GitHub. So again, line 22, you can either delete that or put 2 backslashes to comment that out. So probably want to delete it because it's not really relevant anymore. And so now we can go ahead and pull down the changes. And so you can pull changes. And now we've pulled stuff down, and now he can commit the changes back up again. So now on his local machine, he should have the most up to date. And on my local machine, I have the most up to date. And on GitHub, GitHub's got the most up to date. And so that's where we just have to be, work together in what you're doing and to be able to have the same code on all devices. So your computer, GitHub, and your friend's computer or your partner's computer. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If not, happy coding. Thanks for watching.